Okay, so now that we've got the sitemap done, let's actually skip over dashboard for a minute. We'll come back there, we'll kind of close the loop with it. So instead what I want to do is go down here to my entity, right? And so the travel entity was automatically added down here at the bottom when we set up it as part of the sitemap. So now what we want to do is we're going to go and customize these individual components. So if we click on forms, right now you can see this little all. So this means it's going to show all the forms. And so in this case there's only two, but those are both system generated forms that may or may not be helpful to us. Generally I've found when you're building these model driven apps and you're building an actual solution, you're going to want to design all your own forms, views, charts, all those pieces, and then you'll just select to use your own. So we're going to do that here. So with forms selected, over here on the right, we're going to say, I want to create a new. And we're going to do a main form, right? There's different ones. There's quick view forms, quick create forms. Those are some more of the options that kind of get outside the box a little bit when you want to start building more and more functionality in your app. But for right now, to get ourselves started, we're just going to do a main form. And so after a few seconds, it's going to load up here. And so if you take a look, the first thing you might want to do, because I always forget to do this myself and I get yelled at for it, is if you click on form properties up here at the top and go to display, you're going to see the form name. And so it's going to default to new form. And while that might be helpful the first time you make a form, once you've got loads and loads of forms, you're probably not going to be very happy with that. All right, so I'm going to call this my travel info form. So I can also give a description, things like that, right? There's a lot of different settings in here that you can go and play with, and I encourage you to come back and look through all these, but at the same time, you and I don't want to go looking through all these right now. So travel info form, we'll say OK. And then after you make that change, what I want you to do is go over here to the left and click on Save. And so after a few seconds, it will save your form, right? That first save always takes just a little bit, right? Because it's going and doing a bunch of extra work. Subsequent saves aren't going to take that long. But so then now we're going to go and we're going to take advantage of this very Microsoft Office feeling interface where I kind of get an idea of what I want to do. And down here in the general section, this is where I'm going to determine what fields from my entity I want to show on this particular form. So let's go over here. Let's grab destination. We're just going to drag it, drop it right there. There we go. We got destination. How about our friend transportation? Let's put transportation down here. And then we will put expenses. All right. And then you know what? We also, though, since we have transportation, we're going to put miles driven. And we're going to put that between these two guys. Now, keep in mind, we could bring all of our different fields over and put them in, right? And if you're building an all-up solution, you want to have all the data entry, probably make more sense. But as we're working through here, we don't want to drag all those in and kind of work through those. So right now, we're just going to put in these key ones that gives us some data to work with. And the thing that I really want to talk about here is if you click on miles driven, right? See how the little blue boxes around it? So I know that it is selected. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and go to change properties. So miles driven, if you remember, we only want to have miles driven required if they've entered they went in a car, right? They can't miles driven if they take a boat transportation. So when they choose car in our dropdown for transportation, we want to have miles driven show up. And we already know that at the CDS level, there's a business rule that says if they choose transportation car, that it's going to be a required field. But what we're going to do here at the form level is we're only going to show the field in those instances where they've chosen car. So the first thing we're going to do is on that field property, we're going to set the visible by default, and we're going to deselect it. So now, by default, when this form opens, miles driven will be hidden. Okay? So that seems like a good idea for me. And then now that that has been set, what we're going to do is we're going to go up here and define a business rule. So we're going to click on business rules. And so over on the right now, it shows us the business rules that are already applied. And so this, it turns out, is our business rule that we set at the CDS level. Looks like I get a F for not naming that particular business rule when we set it up over there. But to avoid any future confusion, I'm going to click on new business rule. This is going to bring us into a very similar, if not the exact same interface. And the first thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to hit the drop down this time. And we're going to say, all right, this is going to be the show miles driven rule. There you go. very descriptive, right? So I went from no descriptive to way descriptive. Classic overcompensate. But now we've got that set up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to set up just like we did before. So I'm going to click on my condition. And what's the condition going to be? Check transportation. All right. So what we're going to do for field, we're going to go to the transportation field. And we're going to say if it equals car. So just like we did last time. Say apply. So check our transportation. Then we're going to go over here to components. And we're going to take advantage of the set visibility component. So we're going to drag that over here. And so we're going to set the visibility of miles driven and make it yes. So say apply. So if transportation equals car, show field miles driven. Sounds pretty good to me. So we're going to say save. And then we're going to activate the rule. And this will attempt to activate it. Sounds good to me. And boom, just like that, we're all set. So one of the things I do want to make sure we take a second and talk about though, right, is that there's a difference in these two business rules. So the first business rule we set in our CDS entity so that it went with our data. Anywhere our data went, we're always stuck with this idea of a rule that if someone chooses car for transportation, that miles driven will be required. That is set in stone at the data level, right? But now this rule, this is only for this particular form, right? Because this rule wouldn't make sense if we were using this data source in another platform or our Canvas apps or something like that. So the scope of this particular rule is just this form. And so that's why we have two very similar rules. You know, you're probably thinking we could have put those together, and you can, right? You can stack these things in here, no problem. But in order to get the right solution, we need one at the data level and one at the form level. Awesome, awesome. So let's close that. And I think I feel pretty good about it, right? So we've got a business rule, the proper name this time. Good job. We named our form. We're showing the fields we want. So there's a lot more customizations we could go through and do in here. We could set up some security rules. We can manage the properties, all that stuff. But I think for right now, for our first time through a model-driven app, I feel like we're doing a good job. So we make sure to hit save. We're going to hit publish. And then now that it's published, we're going to close out. And so then over here, we're going to choose our travel info form. So now in our app, the only form available is the travel info form, which is exactly what we want. So we'll save our changes. Looks good. And so in the next section, we're going to talk about views.